The worlds, kingdoms, and environments of Dark Souls are often known for their bleakness and their depressing aspects. These are worlds where they are fated to repeat the same cycle of light and darkness, eventually leading to decay and despair. Dark Souls 1, as you enter it, the world is already past its prime. Dark Souls 3 is similar, worlds merging together, existing for far longer than its natural lifespan. But then there's Dark Souls 2, a game that, as part of the Dark Souls trilogy, naturally should have similar themes and similar undertones to these worlds. Yet there's something unexpected with this particular game, a sense of optimism. Like and subscribe, and let's look into how Dark Souls 2, in terms of its environment, its world, and its surrounding, why this game is surprisingly optimistic. Dark Souls 1 and 3 initially start the player off in dimly lit and decaying areas, which sets this depressing and melancholic tone for the rest of the game. And Dark Souls 2 initially starts like this, seeking answers for the cure to the undead curse, swept away by an ocean of mysteries, arriving in a dimly lit and strangely structured forest. You would think that this tone, this feeling, and that this melancholic environment would continue, like the other two games. But weirdly, as you progress, you find something that isn't present in the other two games. You find a calm ocean, charming cliffs, ruined buildings, yet all bathed in a warm sunlight. You've reached Majula. Now, each of these games does have points of respite, but I think the important factor here is this is at the very beginning. The very beginning sets the tone. Majula is the hub world of Dark Souls 2. It's similar to Firelink Shrine in Dark Souls 1 and 3, which is already strange. This isn't another Firelink. This is Majula. This is a place of rest. This feels like a homely place. It's almost out of character. Even the music is different. Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 3, they have these almost sad pieces that accompany the world around them. It's a little dark, it's a little dingy. There's a little bit of light there, and it's up to you as the player as to what you do next. But Dark Souls 2, the music is very different. Tonally, it still has melancholic note, but it feels warm. The entire area is bathed in warm golden light. Sure, it's out in the open like Dark Souls 1 is, not secluded and hidden away like in Dark Souls 3. This feels like a place where you would expect people to still be living. And this isn't just one area in this game. The next accompanying areas also follow this idea of there being this optimistic tone. You could head to the Forest of the Fallen Giant or to Hyde's Tower of Flame. Both of these areas have ruined building. They have fallen knights, undead, and clashes and battles of struggle. Yet there is still more hope and life in these two scenes than any other area from Dark Souls 1 or Dark Souls 3. The Forest of the Fallen Giant, it's similar to Darkroot Garden. Both have luscious plant life. Both do have life of sort, but Darkroot Garden feels more like an eerie, abandoned, overgrown with creatures lurking out of sight. It's dimly lit and has an eerie feel to it. Yet, the Forest of the Fallen Giant, it has rustling leaves, has flowing water, and that aforementioned warm flowing sunlight. Hyde's Tower of Flame is drenched in light. It's surrounded by this ever-flowing ocean, glistening with the sun's rays. There isn't this cold decay that you might feel with Anor Londo or the oppressive tightness and dread of Lothric. It's run its course. It doesn't pretend to be something else. It is very much past its prime, just as Anor Londo was. Both are baked in rays of golden sunlight, yet one is an illusion and one feels natural. It feels as though this is how all things tend to end. It feels like it was naturally put to sleep, rather than being artificially elongated. Now, of course, not every area has bountiful sunlight. There are still darker areas in Dark Souls 2, such as Drangleic and the Bastille. There is very much rain, dim lighting, and a heavier tone to these areas. The Bastille is a crumbling prison, and Drangleic Castle stands as a shadow of what it once was. The key difference to these locations compared to the darker areas in Dark Souls 1 and 3 is the establishment of these brighter areas. It's very rare that optimistic areas exist within Dark Souls 1 and 3, yet within the first hour or two of exploration within Dark Souls 2, the game has showed the player that this is not a world that is struggling for death. It is a world that has very much accepted death, and because we've seen nature overtake, we've seen areas despite being past their prime still thrive because we've experienced them. The darker areas feel less suffocating despite the oppressive darkness still lingering. It's strange. These areas would feel more menacing if we hadn't been shown these optimistic areas earlier. And then there are two characters within the world of Dark Souls 2 that drastically impact how the world is and why the world feels the way that it does. Compared to the first and the third game, the ruler and lord of this land of Drangleic, Vendrick, a king who, like many before him, was given the choice to link the flame, to exist in a world that could very much offer bountiful success and power, just as Gwyn did, yet he refused, not exactly out of cowardice or of weakness. In fact, he very much wanted to take the flame for himself. Yet, before he claimed the flame, there was a revelation that occurred. No matter how many times the fire is rekindled, it will fade again. And so, not seeing the point of linking a flame that would inevitably seep away with the natural end of the world, he decided to let the world continue to exist how it was and let it fade naturally, rather than have it exist longer than its time. There's an interesting quote from the brother of Vendrick, Aldia, that I think ties this whole idea together very nicely.
And no matter how tender, how exquisite, the lie will remain a lie.
The flame is, to an extent, this lie. It doesn't lie about the power that it can provide. It doesn't lie about the potential that can be found using it. This lie comes from assuming that this power will be eternal. And Vendrick, for his time as a lord, decided he would rather live in the world of a truth compared to Gwyn, who would rather live in the world of a lie, extending the natural order of things. In fact, weirdly enough, to compare these two lords directly and their kingdom, Anor Londo and Drangleic, both powerful, mighty structures, castles. On the surface, Anor Londo appears to be the more inviting, with its vibrant sunlight and piercing rays covering the city in its entirety, compared to Drangleic, which simply stands as a dark, intimidating bastion. And yet, as we progress, we understand that the warm and inviting nature of Anor Londo is a lie. The sunlight is an illusion. It hides that this city was smothered out an age ago. Compared to Drangleic, it does not hide what it is. It simply exists as it does. This may also contribute to why Drangleic, in comparison, still feels less intimidating. To tie this all off, I wanted to take a look at the endings of each of these games. Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3 all have the options to link the fire, to continue and extending the world for a time. Each of these games also has an option for you to walk away from the flame and break free from the cycle, to let the world naturally die out and repeat the cycle as it should have done an age ago. But there's something odd here, because as we already established, Dark Souls 2, the flame hasn't been linked. You're not walking away and letting the world reach its natural end. The world has already reached its natural end. It already exists in what could arguably be seen as the true age of darkness. So what exactly is it that you're walking away from? I think the final fading words of Aldia put it best.
The throne will certainly receive you. What do you want? Tell me. Light, dark, or something else entirely?
The flame will accept you just as it would have accepted Vendrick an age ago, yet you can choose to walk away. There is no path beyond the scope of light, beyond the reach of dark. What could possibly await us? Yes, we seek insatiably. Such is our fate. There is a third option that is not particularly present in any other game except Dark Souls 2. There is something beyond light and dark, and my interpretation of this is the ability for you, the ability for the unkindled, or rather the ability for you, the player, the person, to finally carve out a path for yourself, a path that doesn't follow the promises of power or the promises of a dark eternal age. You are finally not governed by the light and the dark, what is expected of you, or what the world wants of you. You have that choice. You can now do something else entirely. And I think that's very powerful. Every person, every player, every character, every individual seeks something out. We don't know what could possibly await us. It is not necessarily our fate to know, but our fate to pursue it. There is not necessarily a predetermined destiny, and the only one that exists here is one for us to follow. Dark Souls 2 may never truly get the reputation and love that it wholeheartedly deserves. It takes our expectations and morphs them into something we didn't entirely expect, and because of this we are filled not entirely with hopelessness. There is always a lingering hope in these games. Dark Souls 2, however, you don't have to be solely responsible for how that cycle continues to exist. Just this once, you have a choice. That choice can lead to an endless array of possibilities. Now, that's just my vague understanding of how the world of Dark Souls 2 works in comparison to its other games. Let me know in the comments how you feel about Dark Souls 2, how you feel about the worlds, and how you feel in comparison to the other two games. I'd be more than curious to know. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and I'll see every one of you in the next video.